Good evening, everyone. It's 6:45, so we'll kick off. And welcome to tonight's meeting of the Policy and Performance Scrutiny Panel, which is being broadcast and recorded over Microsoft Teams. My name is Councillor Richard Gomer. I'm the chair of this committee and will be conducting the meeting tonight. During the meeting, you'll hear from members of the committee who are on your screen now. Also present are officers from Eastleigh Borough Council. They'll present their reports that have been written and will provide support to the committee tonight. If we experience a connection problem, this event will be paused, and if a councillor loses connection or joins later, we'll ask them to introduce or reintroduce themselves as appropriate. In the unlikely event of myself losing connection, the vice chair will take over, and I'm just checking if he's in the meeting yet. I can't see him.
I'm just going to give him a call, Chair.
Okay. In the event that Malcolm doesn't make it to the meeting, can I suggest that we nominate Councillor Groves to take over? Is that okay with you, Tim? You're muted, Tim, if you're speaking.
Hello, sorry, no, yes, I lost connection there, but I'm back now. Did you want me to be vice chair? Was that, I didn't quite hear what the question was.
In the event, and just until Malcolm gets in.
I'm happy to do that, no problem.
Super, thank you. All those in favour of Tim being stand-in vice chair just until we get hold of Malcolm, could you just unmute and...
Agreed. Agreed.
Yes, agreed. Agreed.
Thank you, everybody. First item on our agenda tonight is apologies. I have apologies from Councillor Dogway. I haven't seen any others. Laura, do we have any other apologies?
Yes, we also have apologies from Councillor Pragnell, Chair.
Super, thank you. Declarations of interest then is number 2 on the agenda. Do members have any declarations of interest that they wish to make? If so, could you please indicate in chat, and when called, please wait for the red box before stating the nature and reason for the interest. Councillor Grajewski.
Yes, I have an interest to declare in agenda item, I can't see it for all my bubbles, the annual report for the Eastleigh Community Safety Partnership. We're going to be talking about domestic abuse and knife crime and so on, and I'm the executive member for public health at Hampshire County Council. Also, I'm the member for the Supporting Families programme across Hampshire, which is also mentioned in the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any more? I don't see any in chat, so if you do, you can raise them later. Which brings us on to the minutes. So we need to consider the minutes from our last meeting, which was held on the 7th of December 2020. Do I have any comments on those? Doesn't look like anyone's shouting in chat. In that case, can I have a proposer and a seconder?
Yes, Councillor Groves proposed the minutes.
I'll second Councillor Couldery.
Thank you. And all those agreed, could you just unmute to...
Yes, agreed.
Agreed.
Yes, agreed.
Thank you very much. Item 4 would be public participation, and sadly there's no public participation tonight, which brings me swiftly on to my chair's report. So I just want to welcome everyone back to Policy and Performance for 2021. Not many updates from me, although members will have seen I circulated an email asking for everyone just to let me know their interest in those standing portfolio groups that we wanted to set up, just to maintain that watching brief over the different portfolio areas. I understand there may have been some IT challenges with the form I sent, so if you can't complete the form, just send me an email back with the portfolios that you're interested in, and those are the portfolios that Cabinet members hold, so they align with the corporate action plan, etc. Otherwise, no updates from me, and Councillor Cross has just joined us. So Councillor Groves, you're off the hook, and Councillor Cross is here as our vice chair. Item 6 on the agenda then is update from task and finish groups. I suspect we don't have too many updates. I know Equalities has met, and Councillor Asman, I think you had said you had a quick update on Equalities, if you wanted to fill us on that. Super.
Thank you, Chair. The working group has had the opportunity to comment on an early draft of the strategy and action plan. The main emphasis is on building a good foundation to achieve improved compliance with our legal duties, but more than this, to see these issues more firmly embedded in the thinking and actions of the Council as it provides its services or carries out its projects. The action plan includes engagement with groups and people with protected characteristics to find out from them what the issues are and what the Council can do to make a difference, to value them and support their participation in borough life. The proposal is to bring the strategy and action plan to policy and performance on March the 11th after a period of public consultation, then Cabinet at the end of March. Chair, I did, as you know, have to leave the meeting early, and I don't know whether anyone has anything else to add to that.
I probably don't have anything myself to add to that. I think you've got the focus and the rest was sort of minutiae. If anyone else on that panel wants to add anything, I can't see them shouting. So we'll move on. I'm not sure if environment or housing have met, but although I know that there are dates in the diary for some of them. Tim, were there any updates from environment that you wanted to give us?
Yes, just a brief update. Meetings arranged for the 8th of February to review the process on the trees supplementary planning document, the work underway on the pollution control strategy, and also start considering biodiversity. A draft version of the trees SPD and some documents will probably be forwarded to the group next week so that we can consider it. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Super, thank you very much, Councillor Groves and Councillor Calder. I don't think housing has met, so I don't know if you have an update or not.
Yes, I haven't got an update. We haven't met, so that's the end of that one.
Super, thank you. But hopefully we can pick that up again soon. In particular, noting that focus on section 106 that a couple of members had raised, and thinking how we want to give those a bit of attention. I do have one suggestion. Jason Light, the specialist for environment strategy, told me today that Hampshire County Council are going through a pre-consultation on the latest phase of their transport strategy, which will go to Cabinet reasonably soon. I suggest that since it's a pre-consultation and that will be followed by an actual consultation, that as a committee we wouldn't want to see the whole of that response. But what I was going to suggest is we just give the environment task and finish group a chance just to have a little look at that in case they want to suggest anything, and that we could just make that little tweak now. So I'm going to propose that we just expand the scope of that group to include those. And Judith, you wanted to come in.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. I was at a briefing on the local transport plan this morning, and one of the things officers wanted to stress is that this is not a consultation. Consultation is where proposals are put forward and then comments are made. This is very much an engagement. We want to hear people's views, not just the views of the big organisations and the organised people who can shout loud, if I can put it that way, but individuals, because this is a plan that's going to hopefully last us right up to 2050. So the more people that can be engaged, the better. Thank you.
Super, thank you. So, Councillor Griffiths, do you know what the process will be? How long, what the timescale is on that? Because it would be nice for us at some point to get involved.
Yeah, the initial engagement ends on, I'm trying to think where I made my notes. I think I did them here. The engagement, people have until the 28th of February to comment, and then there will be a draft local transport plan put out for consultation during the summer, and then hopefully it will be published at the end of 2021.
Super, super. So we can at least flag up with comms, if they haven't already, just to push that for individuals, and we will get the environment task and finish I propose just to take a quick look over what we submit as a council, which will go to Cabinet at their next meeting, I think. So all in favour of that task and finish scope just being increased slightly to consider that? Could you just unmute?
Agreed.
Agreed. Agreed.
Thank you. That brings us on to item 7 on our agenda, which is the Eastleigh Community Safety Partnership. So I'm going to ask our Safety and Resilience Manager, Melvin Hartley, to introduce that item, and welcome Chief Inspector Marcus Cater to the meeting. Welcome, Marcus. Really pleased to have you here. Melvin, could you present the report, please?
Thank you. Just want to check everyone can hear me. Yes, great. Okay, super. Thank you. Yes, this is a report. This is the annual report as required by law for the Community Safety Partnership to report to an audit committee of the Borough Council. And I must remind people that the purpose of this report and review is to look at the work of the Community Safety Partnership as a group rather than as the individual organisations within it. The report has been circulated, and I just wanted to pull out a couple of highlights before opening up the floor. We undertook our strategic review over the summer, last year now, and it was published in September, and that looked at the period from the 1st of July 2019 to the 30th of June 2020. So part of the year did include that period of lockdown between March the 23rd and the end of June. And out of that came a number of the detail which you read in the strategic review, which was attached to the report. And we settled on, as a partnership, 3 new priorities for the coming 18 months. And that was 1, to reduce drug-related harm, secondly, to work with young people at risk, and thirdly, to continue to try and reduce antisocial behaviour across the borough. Just thought I'd take an opportunity to explain how the partnership does this. We have a Community Safety Partnership Board chaired by Councillor Tonya Craig, and involve senior representatives from all 7 of the statutory partners, who cover from the councils, the borough and the county council, the police, the fire, the NHS and the probation services, along with the chief executive of One Community, who represents the voluntary community sector, and that sets the strategic direction and agrees the priorities. And then we have a tactical arm which actually does the work, and we have that in 3 stages, and they represent each of those 3 priorities. So we have, in terms of reducing drug-related harm, we are setting up a new Operation Fortress, a name you may have heard from, initially started its work in Southampton a few years ago, an Operation Fortress group to look at reducing drug-related harm. We have our MET group, which is an existing group working with children's services and others to work with young people at risk. And then we have our Tactical Community Safety Partnership, which looks at all our crime and particularly reducing antisocial behaviour. I just wanted to bring out one particular good news story from the work of the Tactical Community Safety Partnership over the last year, and that's the work we've been doing with those young people who are NEET, not in education, employment or training, having finished their school age at 16. And we were very aware that we had a cohort of young people. You may remember, those who were here last year, that we had a group of young people who were causing a lot of crime, involved in a lot of drugs, involved in a lot of peer-to-peer violence, and a lot of those were becoming NEET in last summer. And so we decided to set up a working group involving a lot of partners to work individually with each of these young people to try and prevent them being NEET, because as I suppose it's not rocket science to realise that being NEET and idle and not doing anything can lead into criminality. And so we've worked with 15 young people. 2 have moved out of the county, but of the remaining 13, 6 are now in college, 3 are working with the Enham Trust, 2 have actually got jobs, and 2 are still neat. So there's some really good progress, and you'll see in paragraph 19 of the report that in the 6 months since June, there were that group had come to the police notice just 37 times, as opposed to 167 times in the previous year. So even if that continues just to double for the whole year for 74, that would be a 55% fall in interactions with the police, including criminality and antisocial behaviour. And that is a project we hope to continue in the coming year, and we have got a bid in to the Police and Crime Commissioner's office, which we should hear about. I was hoping to have been able to announce it today, but we're not going to hear the results until the first week of February, so watch this space. But hopefully we may have been successful in the bid, which will enable us to not only continue the project but to expand it as well. Looking at this, we've already started to look at this year's current year 11s who are starting to cause problems, and we'll target them early intervention before they even become neat at risk of becoming neat in July. I was going to say after their exams, but obviously there's not going to be any exams anymore, but whenever they finish their mainstream education. The only other thing to say is that obviously over the last year, and Marcus will agree that the one of the things that has happened is that the rates of crime and antisocial behaviour compared to previous years has dropped considerably. That is obviously due to the lockdown and the coronavirus. So we'll always have to, in years to come, put a little asterisk next to the figures and say wasn't a normal year when we compare. We won't be comparing like with like in years to come. So that's all I need to say in terms of introduction. As I say, Chief Inspector Cater, the District Commander, who's a central part of the Community Safety Partnership, is online as well, and we're happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Melvin. I enjoyed reading this report. Well, actually, no, enjoyed is always the wrong word, isn't it? I thought this report was really interesting, and I always like seeing this one come across our desks. Members, let's open it up for questions. Would anyone like to ask questions? Councillor Tyson Payne, a couple of comments and questions. All welcome, thank you.
Apologies, Councillor Tyson Payne. I accidentally muted you, meaning to mute Councillor Cross.
There we go. Is that better? So I now need to find the notes I've made, so bear with. So my first one was, I was surprised that domestic violence wasn't in your focus or priorities of work. Now, I take on board what you said, that this was set before we went into lockdown. And I am just concerned that during lockdown, domestic violence has increased, and therefore I just wanted to see if there was any update on that. And then on the same vein, I think it would be quite useful, and I don't know if it's possible, to report on domestic violence protection orders and how many have been, the police officer may well be able to answer this, whether we should be reporting on how many of those have been through the courts, just to give us a feel each year for whether things are going up, down or staying steady. And the other comment was, I'm struggling that this report doesn't have an equality and diversity implications, because it feels to me like absolutely it does. So those were my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I suppose insofar as this isn't a decision-making report, we wouldn't have an EQAA necessarily on our report, but maybe Melvin can reassure us that those do happen when the decisions are being taken around priorities and things. No.
Yes. OK, I'll take those in order, if I may, Councillor Tyson Payne. Domestic violence. This looks at the work of the partnership rather than the work of the individual organisations. Domestic violence is very much a priority in terms of reducing crime and disorder across the piece. And what we had to do is agree a set of priorities that we can, as a group, as a multi-agency group, work together to tackle and reduce. Through the commission services from the Police and Crime Commissioner and the County Council, we have domestic violence advocates, domestic violence services, domestic violence priorities within the police work. So it's not that the partnership isn't interested in it. It's not a focus for our work in terms of what we do as a partnership, but individual organisations within the partnership do a lot. The probation working with offenders, the police working with offenders and dealing obviously firsthand with the incidents when they occur, and then the commission services, which is commissioned by the police, by the County Council and the Police and Crime Commissioner, are working with victims, and there are other services as well working with victims. Domestic violence protection orders, they're issued by the police, and Marcus would have to answer that question. I'll let him come in a minute. In terms of equality and diversity, this is a report of the partnership, not of the council, and it's looking backwards rather than forwards. So it's a report on what we've done rather than going forward, and that's why there are no implications. In terms of what we look at throughout our work, ensuring that we go where the need is, and that may well be in terms of looking at victims, looking at offenders, and looking at all that, and hate crime particularly. You know, we take those into consideration.
Thank you very much.
Thank you both. Who's next on the list? Councillor Cross.
Thank you, Chair. Just having problems with the microphone. It's just a little thing. It's about antisocial behaviour. All the youths that you're talking about have been locked down for nearly a year now, and they'll probably be coming out in the summer. As you know, in Hamble, we get problems with antisocial behaviour. What is the planning, or what do you expect to see or think you might see when the lockdown comes down in the summer months? I don't know whether that's anything to do with you, but that's my main concern.
I can answer that easily. We had a meeting of the Hamble subgroup only last week, and we've got new Inspector Louise Hubble, who is the new inspector for the Hedge End part of the southern parishes of the borough, meeting with us for the first time, and we're putting together our plans for the summer. We're well aware that we've got a hotspot down there, especially down by the jetty, and the issues around there, but across the whole of Hamble and Netley, it is a hotspot. So we have a small working group involving the police, Inspector Hubble and her team, my antisocial behaviour lead Andy Chivers, myself, the youth service, the local area manager, the harbour master, and the parish council. So we are drawing a lot of people together to make sure we have a plan in place for, as you say, when the boundaries are set free, and no doubt a few individuals might decide to run wild. Shall we put it that way?
Yeah, thank you for that. It's just also borough-wide, like Eastleigh, you know, you got plans all in place then. Great.
Yeah, we do have plans, and what we do every month, we look at what's happening, and then we can alter our plans depending on where hotspots are occurring and everything else. We're quite flexible in order to move to meet the rising incidents wherever they pop up. Yes.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think we've got Councillor Broadhurst next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, a couple of comments. I think this is the most comprehensive report about community safety that I can remember seeing my time on the council. So congratulations, Melvin. I think you're doing a fantastic job on that. Very pleased to see the work that we're doing with the young people. Having sort of spent the last 17 years of my working life, a long time ago, working with young people, it's good to see that we are doing that. And also, I'd just like to publicly compliment Chief Inspector Marcus Cater. I think we had a meeting with him in September, an online meeting, when he introduced himself, and the things that he said he would do then, he's started doing, and I was actually very impressed, and it gives me a lot of hope for the future. I think one of the sad things at the moment is, of course, that as councillors, we can't get out in our natural environment and be meeting people on doorsteps, because when we are the people that can often spot things. You know, if you see a big pile of blinking correspondence, it could be that someone has been targeted by scammers. Things like that we can do, and it's a shame we can't do it, because we've all got to work together, because we can be the eyes for the police, because they can't be everywhere, and I think it's important that we all remember that. The only thing I would perhaps like to see on the data, we always used to hear that Eastleigh was a very, very low crime area compared with our neighbouring authorities. It would just be nice to have a little table so that we could get that into perspective of how we do rate against our neighbours, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alan. I was going to make a similar point around that comparison, because in that annual review we've got the sort of annual comparison. I did wonder if the comparison with neighbouring authorities and sort of statistical nearest neighbours might be available. I don't know if that is, Melvin.
The map on page 12 of the strategic review is with our I can draw out of that our crime, our statistical neighbours. Yes, I can draw out that. It's the Home Office used to produce this wonderful online system where you could immediately see your basket of most similar authorities, and used to be tapping there and bingo. They don't do that anymore, unfortunately. So we're relying on LGA research, which the other Melvin Reader does for me. So I can pull out that. But as you can see, from this looks at all district councils in the country, and we see we're roughly in the middle. Or just slightly better than middle in terms of the whole country. Don't go and live in Lincoln, but yes. So that just looks at district councils across the country. Funnily enough, in our most similar authorities group of the old basket, Fareham always used to be with us, and we run neck and neck in terms of with Fareham around levels of crime, reported crime in most categories. So we're both roughly, I suppose, about a third in the top, on the edge of the top third in the country. But I can try and get off Melvin what the our most similar authorities list, and let you know.
Super, thank you. Councillor Broadhurst, does that answer your questions?
Yes, thanks.
Super, thank you. Councillor Dogood next.
Yes, Councillor Allen has put in chat. I was thinking more about our local neighbours, and I think that's what you were addressing. But I do think there is some information available which is even more focused into particular ward areas, isn't there, which could be of interest and use, and give some comparisons within the greater Eastleigh area. But that wasn't my question. My question was on the NEATs, which is very good and very commendable and a great result. But I'm curious about the follow-up. I've done some work myself in this area in the past in making interactive videos for this group, and that's been quite a helpful stepping stone for them. But I wonder, I would imagine there's a limit to how far we've got the resources and the ability to track these folk. And you know, going into college, going to the Ellen Trust, I guess there's some allowance and monetary support to some very minor degree, but not very much. So it's all rather fragile, I would imagine. And I just welcome your comments on whether we're able to track and follow up, or whether resources limit that.
Yes, I'll answer both questions. Yes, there is ward data in very great detail, which is done by the Police and Crime Commissioner's Office, and I can pull that out. But it goes into such detail. It's sometimes difficult to know what to pull out. in terms of the level of detail, because we can track every different crime type by ward and compare it with neighbouring wards. But I think it would be, in terms of historical stuff over the last 8 years I've been here, it is the same wards year on year which have the highest crime in the borough, and that hasn't changed in 8 years. But I can do some work on that if that's wanted. In terms of the NEETs, yes, we have limited resources in terms of being able to track them. With a small cohort of 13, 14, we can do that, and the police can track them in terms of interactions and crimes and arrests and that type of thing. And we're in touch with the partners who are the partners around the table to know how they're doing at college and everything else. Once that grows and we take on another cohort of NEETs in July, we'll have double the numbers. Hence the bid, really, and the bid to the Police and Crime Commissioner's Office is to recruit a NEET coordinator for 15 hours a week to run the whole programme. And if we're successful, we'll be able to employ someone to do that, certainly for a year as a pilot, to demonstrate the work and to follow and go into the detail, and also set up more opportunities of training in education and go into more detail with these and deal with a much larger group of young people. So we will carry on next year, or next academic year, so to speak, with the project on a very light touch basis, which we've been doing at the moment, with all the agencies putting their resources in terms of people. But if we are successful in the bid, we'll be able to take it to the next level. So fingers crossed. We shall hear next week. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And then Councillor Grajewski.
Thank you. Can I first of all thank Melvin Hartley for another excellent report. You know, they're always worth reading.
Thank you.
Not that all reports aren't, of course. Chairman, could I make some comments, or do you still want to just stick to questions?
We can do both.
Okay, fine. Because I've got a few I've been scribbling down here. On domestic violence, and can I also, say that also includes domestic abuse, which is different. There's a lot of domestic abuse around which doesn't actually result in violence, and I know that it takes up a lot of police time, and it's very much a focus for us as a public health issue at the County Council. And I think it was in 2019 I launched the New Hampshire Domestic Abuse Service alongside the Hampton Trust and so on. There was quite a big investment in that, and there are helplines and so on. And it's also about working with victims and perpetrators, and we've spent a lot of targeted time doing targeted messaging on social media to reach people. And the thing that I always try to get across when I'm asked about it is that domestic abuse is everybody's business. So if people suspect it, and who knows, there may be people listening in here tonight who think, oh, well, I walked past so-and-so's house the other day. Don't keep quiet about it, because you're not doing anybody any favours. We've got to report it so that it can be looked at. On the NEETs, it's not just, there are a number of young people who are quite difficult to reach, I think, and who have a lot of issues. I think, Melvin, you'd agree with me there. And I just thought that the committee, the panel might be interested to know that earlier this year we allocated £12,000 to fund a preventative project on knife crime elsewhere in Hampshire, working with a very small group of offenders, and I've just asked for the results of that. It's been quite difficult to run during the pandemic, but we should get some results from that, and then it may be possible to roll that out elsewhere, although I don't think knife crime is a particular problem in Eastleigh, and hopefully it will stay that way. But just as an illustration of how you've got to work with these groups a sort of small scale. And a word about the Hampshire Supporting Families programme. I'm pleased that Eastleigh as a district has always been a strong player in the programme, and from when Min Partner was involved and before that, and we have actually just put more manpower onto and get what's the word, getting people onto the programme, attaching, thank you, that's the phrase that we use. And whilst at paragraph 13 it says that the 61 families were added in that time period, resulting in 43 successful claims, that doesn't mean only 43 families have been helped, because the criteria for a successful claim runs to several pages. I mean, there are lots of categories, because the families often have multiple problems, and you know, being able to prove that school attendance has gone up, that, you know, Johnny's got a job and isn't neat anymore, and so on, can be quite tricky. So sometimes we don't qualify for a reward, not a reward, yes.
Well, it is called a reward payment.
Well, it is a reward, I guess, but it doesn't mean to say those families haven't been helped in some way. They just might not meet all of the criteria. And it's always heartening. I've seen a couple of people put on social media who've been through the programme, you know, to say thank you for it, because it's really just helped them with a sort of holistic approach to the family to get back on track. And it's not, yeah, that in itself is a good thing, but on top of that, Solent University did some work looking at the success of the programme, and have found that it also saves around £649,000 per annum to the public purse in avoided costs. So, you know, last year we weren't sure if the programme was going to carry on. It was really tricky. And this year we've got a target of 928. And we're attaching like mad, because we know that the programme is going to continue for at least another year, which I'm really pleased about. And we're putting also a lot more work into the intensive support as well. So sorry to take up so much time, but I think it's really quite an exciting project. It's been running now for several years, and I hope it continues in the future, because it makes a huge difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. That's some interesting background. Melvin, you probably want to come back on some of that.
Yes. I through the wonders of email, I've been told that going back to question number 2 from Councillor Tyson Payne, that there were 6 domestic violence protection notices and 6 domestic violence protection orders issued in the last year. I've been told that by email. Thank you, Chief Inspector Cater. Coming back to your point, thank you very much. Yes, domestic violence and abuse. We should always use both terms. You're quite right to correct me there, Councillor Directly, because abuse is just as pernicious, and especially with coercive control now being part of it. In terms of our needs, yes, knife crime fortunately is relatively low here in the borough. I'm glad to say, not that we haven't had incidents, but it's not like in other places. And yes, the NEETs, I should clarify that the people we're working with are not just all NEETs, but the ones who are NEET and causing problems in terms of crime and disorder. So they have to qualify on both grounds. Not that that's a good qualification, but they do need to qualify in order to be able to be part of our project. Because in the end of the day, our remit is to reduce crime and disorder. So yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gruevski, do you have any follow-up comments, or is that fine?
Thanks for the opportunity. Just to say that through the Supporting Families programme, and Melvin, I know you put in an application because we talked about it a long time ago, but we did some transition grants from the programme, £100,000 across the county. Were any of the Eastleigh projects successful? Because there was that, and then there were the COVID-19 grants that we did fairly early on in the pandemic, another £100,000 to ensure that there was extra support going out to vulnerable families.
We certainly did do had quite a bit on the COVID COVID grant front. I don't think we had I don't know about the transition fund, because the early help hub team managed that part, but certainly we had COVID monies which we did use with quite extensively with quite a number of families. Yes.
Thank you.
Super, thank you. I've got no one else in chat, but I have some questions of my own. So in the annual review, talking about antisocial behaviour, it notes that diversion is a key element of the approach, and schemes like the Friday night football and the work of youth service provision through groundworks, etc., are important. I just wondered what the impact of lockdown had been on those, whether there's been anything that can still carry on. I know in West End our youth team were doing a little bit of detached work, but even that was difficult at some points, and if not, what the alternatives might be. And then I suppose as a follow-up to that, does the partnership engage with the sort of the youth partnerships that exist around the borough? So I know in HEWEB we have a youth partnership that puts on diversionary activities, etc., and I believe ELAC now have something similar, so I just wondered if that link existed.
Am I live? Yes. In terms of diversion, yes. I mean, during lockdown, certainly in the first lockdown and in the current lockdown, the youth work has continued online, and when they have been doing outreach, it's really to send people home, because obviously they shouldn't be out and about. So it's been about education and sending people home before the police come along and say you shouldn't be here and issue a fixed penalty notice. So it's about so there's, I suppose the tenet of that youth work has slightly changed during lockdown, but they have been working online. Both Groundwork, Youth Options and Y-Zone, our own, have been doing stuff online with young people. Obviously things like Friday night football and everything has just stopped, and it is difficult, because we can only engage with those who therefore dial in and want to engage, and reaching those hard to reach ones has been hard because of that, especially with schools being closed as well. Having said that, the Bridge School has remained open throughout the lockdowns, and they do supply probably 90% of our NEET cohort and others who cause issues, inevitably, because they're the ones who can't stay in mainstream schools, partly because of their behaviour quite often. So we are keeping that linking going with the Bridge. The Bridge are very central to the Tactical Community Safety Partnership as a school, because, and as is Eastleigh College, so they're all embedded in our processes as well, and we draw in the other schools as and when we need to. So recently we've had a Councillor Cross talked about Hamble School have come along to the last couple of sessions because of some issues we've had down there. In terms of the youth partnerships around the borough, we don't engage directly, but that's where I use the local area managers and others to engage back to be the feedback, and the local area managers can come to our tactical meetings and feedback from those local things that are going on. I suppose with just myself and a part-time community safety officer, and 90% of my time in the last year has been spent on COVID, I can't spread myself that thinly, but that's what the local area people can do for us in that sense, and be our eyes and ears with those groups. So I get feedback from, for instance, from Julia over at HEWEB. So yes, they are embedded in one way, shape or form.
Super, thank you. And then one more question. You've mentioned the importance of schools in identifying young people at risk of becoming NEETs. I suppose I'm a little concerned that potentially in economically difficult times we may have a cohort of young people who have been in employment but potentially find themselves unemployed and at risk through that route. Are we in a position to be able to pick those up?
If they're, in terms of the NEET project, if they're still under 18 and they were in employment and then unemployed and become NEET again, and they're causing problems for us in terms of, yes, we'll bring them into the fold. In fact, one of those 15 was a person who would be equivalent to upper sixth. So yes, we did do that. He went to college, dropped out of college, and then started to cause problems, and so we brought him into the fold, and he's done some training, and he's now back in with the Enham Trust, and the aim is to get him back into college because he dropped out. So yeah, that is one example. Yes.
Super. And I suppose just to follow up on that, are there tactics that would help to identify those people, because they probably won't be in college or at school at the moment?
Well, as far as the community safety partners are concerned, it will come through criminality, or probably not criminality, more likely to be antisocial behaviour. Unfortunately, at the moment, it's quite difficult because most antisocial behaviour has, ceased. And if people are out on the streets in the evenings, the police are dealing with them as not in terms of antisocial behaviour, but in terms of COVID and what the lockdown law says. So, but we are aware of, I'm sure Marcus will agree that the local bobbies are aware of who's out there, and if a young person gets picked up for breaching code, only this last week, Hampshire Constabulary allowing their child to consistently breach COVID rules. Now, I don't know the circumstances around that. I just know that headline. So there are ways into finding out who these individuals are. Lots of people out there with eyes and ears.
Super, thank you. That's all I've got on my list. I don't see anyone else asking to speak in the chat, so I think that just leaves us to probably note this report and the positive news within it, and to thank Melvin and Marcus for coming along, and that probably doesn't need a vote, but thank you very much for attending and filling us in on that, and we look forward to another report and another update probably next January or February. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gummer. Thank you.
So, item 8 on our agenda is the annual customer compliments and complaints. I'm going to ask Case Management Team Leader Jessica Hatch to introduce item 8 on the agenda, and this is Jess's first report at a committee. So welcome, Jess, and we'll try not to throw anything too difficult your way.
Thank you, Jess. Much appreciated. So I'm Jessica Hatch. I'm Case Management Team Leader within Eastleigh Borough Council. So not only do I support customer care, I also support council tax as well as land charges. So they're my areas I look after. So what I have been tasked with is monitoring and management of complaints and compliments, which falls under customer care now. So there are several different ways, media-wise, that complaints can come in. So I have detailed this in the report. So they can come in via phone, email, letter, face-to-face when the building is open, and also as well via phone via the customer service centre, and they then log those on the staff portal. Just to note as well, there has been a decrease in complaints and compliments partly due to COVID, so it is uncharted times during the pandemic. So we probably could put a little asterisk against this year to say, do we consider this for the years following? And also as well to note the challenging times that multiple service areas have faced within this time as well. So that may reflect within customer care as well. Please note that this doesn't include environmental health complaints, as they are separate, such as noise nuisance complaints and bonfires, etc. We do know within the first lockdown that they did rocket through the first lockdown period, so they are separate to customer care. So off the back of having a meeting with Andrew Treyer, we decided a target area to improve customer care itself. So off the back of that, there is internal monitoring system, which I pick up weekly with high volume service areas. So I will pull a report and send that weekly. As you also see from the report, we have a red, amber, green, so a RAG status within our key performance indicators of how the complaints are doing. So as you can see from that, it has much improved. I took over supporting customer care mid-September and then fully took it over around the beginning of November. So it's quite early doors. So anything prior to that, I probably wouldn't be able to comment on and give too much detail. Also as well, complaints outstanding, that has massively fallen. So we look at anything over service level agreement of returning the complaint response within 15 working days. Same again, you can probably see from the targets that we've put on there, we have seen a bit of a drop in complaints, but also as well, the reduction of those being responded to within a timely manner. Also as well, moving forward, executive head roles will be updated on response time for their specific target areas, and I will be working with them closely like I have done already to make sure that the service level agreement is stuck to as much as possible, but we can agree an extension in some complicated circumstances. For instance, planning, they're not very straightforward. If we get any objections or any complaints against those, they can be more time consuming to respond to. Also as well, we will look moving forward, training more staff, well, this existing staff, sorry, within the high volume areas. So that will be prioritised to make sure that they're effectively able to respond to the complaints in time, but also as well, they've got the support they need as well. And that's it from me.
Super, thank you very much. Questions and comments from members, if you just shout in chat. Since no one's done it yet, I have a few questions. On, I don't have page numbers on my printout. There's a table just below paragraph 15, well, on the page after paragraph 15, and the last row is blank. Are they complaints that effectively haven't been classified for some reason?
Yes, so looking back through the data, where we have migrated on to customer care and also into Salesforce, this is something that we are coming across and working with IT. So as you can see, since the first year it went live, they were 12 were blank, but then it has reduced to 5. So we just need to keep an eye on them, monitoring the system, making sure that everything is categorised as it should be moving forward.
Super, that's what I thought you would say, and I'm glad to hear that you're on it with IT, because that does affect data quality. And then another related question on that. Appendix 2, page 2 of that, shows 115 complaints out of 531 in that first bar, which isn't labelled, which I assume is also complaints that aren't classified by service area.
Sure, they're either undetermined or blank. So same again, it is a matter of moving forward, but undetermined, I think we need to look into that moving forward, because they're the complaints that don't quite fall within a general inquiry or a level 1 complaint. There could be complaint elements in there, so we do need to acknowledge them and send them to the relevant service area to respond, but it's something we can work with moving forward.
Super, thank you. And then Councillor Tidridge, you have a question.
Yes, thank you. Really quick one, which is item, where are we? Just managed to close ModGov. There's a table showing complaint, item 19, I think, page 41 on the ModGov version, but item 19 there's a table. Just a really picky comment, which is, could it be rearranged just so things are horizontally aligned? Just so when you're looking across, you're comparing the same thing across. So it's a really little point, but thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll note that for next year's
report. If you can find that, if I can manage to reopen ModGov, I'll put the paragraph number up.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Otherwise, I've got more. Well, unless anyone else asks. This is paragraph 21. Additional oversight by service delivery case management team leader has delivered a reduction in the number of complaints that go over the SLA and achieving the target of 25% or less over SLA for November 20. I actually think, since I believe we managed 0% in December, I think we should re-benchmark that performance indicator and set a target of 0, since that's ideally what we want and it appears to be achievable. And this probably goes up to the performance monitoring team, but that's what I think we should make a recommendation on panel. I suppose the question for Jess there is, do you think that 0% can be maintained, or is that just a really happy outlier?
In an ideal world, I would like to have 0%, but the perfect ideal is probably not 100% achievable. So if we can have a give or take, in an ideal world, I would no more than 10% would be something to work towards. So 25% was a massive reduction, as you can see from the table previously. So ideally, I would like to work to no more than 10% max, and then gradually reduce that as we improve the process of customer care.
Absolutely. Okay, so in a minute, let's come back to that. We can discuss when we think about recommendations. Andy Treyer, you would like to come in.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair, and good evening, councillors. Just to take that one a little bit further, what has happened in the past, we've had some really good short-term gains made, and at times we've got a little bit too ambitious, I think, and arrived at performance levels that we struggle to sustain. So I think the conversations that Jess and I had is looking at performance. Let's set ourselves a short-term target, and then we will keep monitoring that and try and move performance forward to a level that, if you like, the PI will probably sit around amber most of the time. If the PI is always green, it's worthless. If the PI is always red, it's worthless. So it needs to be around about amber. So we are always aiming slightly higher than we are currently at. So hopefully that's acceptable, and we don't want to set 0 now. We've done incredibly well early on, and I'd love to put more pressure on Jess, of course I would, but I'm trying to be reasonable here, and we'll review our target in light of your feedback and the views of the committee, because I am confident with Jess's oversight that performance will continue to head in the right direction. So thank you for that, Chair.
Thank you. And then Councillor Cross, you wanted to come in.
Sorry to be a bit pedantic. I'm colourblind and I can't see red, amber, grey or blue. So when you're talking about these things, I was wondering if there's a way that you can actually itemise it, because I have the same problem with planners when they mark a drawing out with red. I can't see it. It's just me being me, I'm afraid.
No problem. That is a really good point when we're using RAG in general. I printed this report out in black and white, so I don't actually know if it was in colour in the first place or what colour it was. But yes, absolutely, and that's an equalities issue. And yes, I will talk to officers about how we use something other than RAG as a colour scheme for the same purpose. If there's no other comments, I propose we just move that one recommendation then, committee, that the target for complaints outside of SLA, I'm just going to say, is reduced from 25%, and I won't say to 0. I don't know if anyone objects to that. Otherwise, I'll just ask you to unmute and tell me if you agree.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Agreed. Yeah.
Thank you. Any dissent on that one? No? Brilliant. Well, we'll get that recommendation off to Cabinet then. Thank you, Jess, for that report and that very thorough report and the good news inside it. I hope we can stay at 0%. I hear what you're saying, that it might not be achievable, but as close to 0 as possible. And then we can move on to our next item when I find the right bit of paper, which is the Cabinet Forward Plan, and we'll take that as usual with our own work plan. There was nothing I could see in the Cabinet Forward Plan of interest, partly because there's not very much in the Cabinet Forward Plan at the moment. So in terms of our work programme, there have been a few changes. So some of those environment items have slipped. Next month will be pretty much just the budget, and we may have time for one or two small items if we need to. What I wanted to propose is also that we consider briefly how we want to handle planning for next year's work programme, and whether we want to have a little workshop or just delegate that to a smaller group so we can have that discussion. But Councillor Grajewski, you wanted to comment.
Yes, thank you. The NHS is obviously under a lot of pressure at the moment, and I'm sort of loath to ask them to do things and put more work on them, but you will be aware that they have some pretty, how can I put it, bold, serious proposals for hospital services in Mid Hampshire involving Winchester and Basingstoke. I've been to their presentations to the HASC, that's the Health and Adult Social Care Committee at the county, and now we've set up a sort of scrutiny subcommittee just to look at their proposals, which I think they've pushed back a bit, but nevertheless this is all happening incredibly quickly. I'm not convinced that most people even know about it, despite the publicity. I questioned them on this, and they said, "Oh, but it's on our website." Well, actually, I'm sorry, your website is not everybody's go-to place. So I just wondered if, because it obviously involves a lot of Eastleigh residents, perhaps those in the south of the borough use Southampton Hospital. I'm not sure. I don't have the figures, but I wonder, should we invite them to come and present to us? Do you think it would be appropriate? I'd like to know what other panel members think about that.
In my view, that absolutely would be appropriate, and it had crossed my attention, and I may even have asked an officer about it. So yes, absolutely, I think we do need to get them to come and speak to us, because it clearly does affect a large portion.
Yeah.
Of the, so if anyone else has any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'm quite sure that the Basingstoke would be doing this if they thought that all of the services were going to transfer to Winchester. Yeah. Because they say they haven't made up their mind, but to me, I know what messages I'm getting from what they're saying. Thank you.
Yeah, we will see who we need to talk to about that then and get that in the work programme. So just in terms of work planning for the rest of next year, we can try and do a little online workshop like we did at the start of this year, if members are up for that. Otherwise, we can, well, I and Councillor Cross as chair and vice chair can work up a work plan and then bring it to the next meeting or a meeting after that for comments. I don't know what everyone's thoughts are on that. I just quite enjoy workshops, so it doesn't have to be for everyone.
Well, I thought the workshop was very good last time, and we achieved a lot. So if people want to do a workshop on Zoom, it'd be, because then we got more people throwing questions in and what to do rather than just two of us. That's my opinion, but what do other people say?
Chat is mixed. Workshop online might be difficult. Yes, more difficult. Different. Councillor Dogood says workshop good. What I propose then is that I have a think. I get my head together with you, Malcolm, and we can do a little event for anyone who's interested in helping thrash that work plan out a little bit more in due course then.
Yeah, okay.
Super, in which case, that just brings me on to the date of the next meeting, which is Thursday the 11th of February at 6:45 p.m, which will also be on Microsoft Teams, and that will be the budget meeting. And I believe I saw come in during the meeting an email with the draft budget book, so there's no excuse for not having done that reading. There will be plenty there, I'm sure. So with that, thank you all for coming and for your comments this evening, and I will see you on the 11th, if not before.
Okay then, thank you.
Thank you, Richard.